welcome back to the next episode of Rise and Vibe at the Mental Health Bar. I'm Jennifer Moore, your host, and I have with me today Karl with a K White, who I met recently outside of a local retail business. Karl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I have to maybe expand on that met outside of a local retail business just a little bit because, if you weren't there, it maybe sounds a little bit strange, but I walked up behind you. The business wasn't quite open yet. And I noticed your fabulous snakeskin boots. Oh my goodness, yeah, you're wearing them. And gave you a compliment, which led to a fantastic conversation just around like mental health and, parallel lives and the decisions that we make. And so I invited you to join me here today to just tell me a little bit about your story and share with others where you've been and how far you've come and what you're into now.
Certainly. I'm 64 years old. I just had a birthday beginning of October. I was Navy hospital corpsman back in the late 70s. They shipped me out to Oakland, California to a Navy hospital. And that's when all hell broke loose. I was, teenager, grew up at that time era was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, glamorized. So, my mom used to kid when people would ask when I was younger what I wanted to be when I grew up. It was either a Hell's Angel or a Playboy. So, the sign of the times back then, that was it. But it got further involved in drugs once I got out of the military. I stayed out in California, got involved with motorcycling communities, the rougher side, let's say. And I just really enjoyed cocaine, and back then it was biker crank, now it's crystal meth, pretty much the same substance. Not so much drinking. Weed is goes without saying, but I don't think that's any kind of a problem drug personally. But it went up and down through the years until I hit a really bad snag about 7 years ago. I had a bad injury, was prescribed opiates, which I'm not a big fan of, but they did help with the pain. But and other things like Neurontin and gabapentin and amitriptyline, all these nerve drugs that just made me a zombie. So I was pretty good in my substance use. I dabbled here and there, but I didn't think it was a problem until I really relied on crystal meth to stay awake because of these other drugs. And once that got a hold of me again, I just said, fuck it with the other drugs and did crystal meth, because one of the reasons meth came into play in the first place was both the Allied and the Axis, Germany, mostly soldiers, during the war, World War II, they used that, and it, you can get shot a few times and keep motoring through. It kept you awake. You could march. They didn't have to worry about food so much. And that's kind of the where that drug began. And I found out the same thing for me. It just worked. It was like a miracle drug. So I got heavily involved into crystal meth, snorting it. Thankfully, that was my only way of entry. Although I've tried other things and just, some things didn't sit well with me. So, you go with what you know. I got to a point where all the decisions I was making were really bad decisions. And I ended up getting 2 marijuana DUIs, driving like a maniac. Ended up having a fight with the landlord. I got evicted, so now I'm homeless, facing jail time. My job, that was the reason I got injured. It was a workers' comp injury, so no job, facing jail, tent camping, couch surfing, and I'm 56 years old, and I didn't plan for this stage of life. I didn't think I'd be living past 45, just because of motorcycles, drugs, alcohol, jealous husbands, you know. Um, so finally, you know, I realized, you know, I'm hitting rock bottom. My girlfriend's family didn't want nothing to do with me. My brother really didn't want much to do with me. Fortunately, my mom was in the later stages of Alzheimer's, so she didn't even know what was going on, thankfully. But when you realize that your life is falling to shit, you can either go with it and get further into the depths or do something about it. And fortunately, being a veteran, sought out help at the VA hospital here in Coatesville, went into rehab, did the 30-day detox, and then a year both homeless, domiciliary, and drug treatment. And I got a lot of help. And long story short, you know, they got me back on my feet. I made better choices, got my life back together. I went into rehab in December 2016, and through doing everything that was requested and told and suggested, um, you know, I made it out to the point where I was very successful. The doctors and some of the other psychologists and social workers saw that I was doing very well and successful in my recovery. And a few of them suggested I become a peer support specialist. And at the time, you know, it sounded like a good idea, but I was very hesitant. I didn't think, you know, well, you know, what am I going to do, you know? Became very active during COVID with video groups, more as a social outlet for myself, not so much that I needed it, but it just gave me an outlet instead of sitting in a house. You know, two cats, and Xbox, and TV don't cut it, you know, for socialization.
Definitely need more socialization
So,
than
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I started, you know, being active in groups with that, and it was strictly veterans. And so I started helping other veterans with their struggles, giving them advice on how I handled my life and the hiccups that occur in just normal life, whether you're addict or struggling or not, you know, it's just life. And with that, I realized that I did have kind of a knack for connecting with people and helping. It was suggested again I become a peer support specialist. The VA offered me through their work restoration program. They got me a scholarship for a 2-week course. It was $1,300, which isn't much, but when you're not making any money, you know, every little bit. So they got me the scholarship. I got the course done. I got certified by the state, and I started working out in Ephrata at a hospital out there in their behavioral health unit as a peer support. That was an eye opener because, you know, I've been in the medical system as far as an employee for a number of years when I in the service, after the service, but mental health was a new aspect. I was always trauma, self-harm, suicidal, homicidal people, just the most complicated things that I didn't really know about at the time, you know. And I even thought about, like, you know, why am I here now? I'm in a behavioral health unit. What am I doing here? Can I help? Am I going to make a difference? And, you know, it took a little while to adapt, but then I just really started connecting with the people, both that I worked with. It's an awesome team I work with, and the patients. And it just blossomed. I've been there almost 2 years now. I still work there part-time. But I was on Social Security, disability, Section 8 housing. Section 8 and Social Security isn't the answer, but it really helped, but it wasn't enough. So, you know, I tried working part-time, but then I got to a point where I was making more than Social Security would allow. So now, you know, things are in jeopardy. My income's in jeopardy. My Section 8's in jeopardy. I'm freaking out, trying to figure things out. And a few positions came up at the VA, and I ended up getting hired by the VA recently as a peer support specialist. And I love it, man. I just enjoy, 2 years into it and 4 years at the VA, or 4 months now at the VA. I just really enjoy helping people when you see somebody that is successful, even in the littlest bit. It's just so rewarding for me, and I'm so happy that I had the opportunities presented to me, and that I'm able to do this and get paid. Who'd have thought 30, 40 years of being a meth freak would have led to a career, but here I am.
So tell me a little bit about what it looks like, in the day-to-day life of a peer support specialist. Like, what do you actually, do? What do you provide? How does that work?
Peer support is basically through shared experience. I give hope and suggestions to people that are struggling. Mostly, I'm more into the substance use, homeless, PTSD, depression, because that's what I've suffered from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that support. I mean, there's no answer. Some people are open to discussion and looking into their own problems and situations and trying to overcome whatever they're struggling with. Other people just need somebody to say, yeah, that sucks, and I get it, and that can make a difference for people that are struggling.
It absolutely can. Just knowing that you're not alone, because a lot of people say it, but if you haven't actually made that connection with somebody who has experienced something similar that you've experienced, that has experienced, their own traumas or whatever the case may be, that connection just kind of feels like, well, other people aren't alone, but I am, right? So having that, just that direct connection, I can see how valuable that is.
Yeah, and that gets said to me all the time, just thank you for listening. Mm-hmm. Or, we'll be talking about something and they go, you get it. I wish my doctor would get it, or I wish my case manager would get it, or whoever, Mm-hmm. But it means a lot. And fortunately, I was on the receiving end of good peer support at the VA as well. And it does make a difference. I think your success when it does come to whatever you're struggling with is if you're true about it and you really want help, it's 90%, 95% up to you and however you do it. But on top of that, you're only as good as your doctors, you're only as good as your case managers, you're only as good as your support system. And there's a lot of people out there that either have not the correct team working with them. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just doctors, it's nutrition and medical doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, case managers, clergy, if that's part of you, family, it's all interconnected. And I've been fortunate enough to have a good support system, and I was adamant about getting myself back on my feet, and that made a big difference, because if you don't give a shit, nobody else is going to give a shit. You have to care about yourself first.
They can't give enough shit for you.
Right.
Absolutely. And I like that you bring up the, you're only as good as your support system, right? Because I've definitely seen and experienced and talked to a lot of people that have also experienced, reaching out to get that help. And you're trying, it's like that monumental step of saying, okay, I'm not okay. I do need something. Maybe I don't know what I need, but somebody out there has to know. So a lot of people start with their doctors. And I've heard from some parents that have said, their doctor said, well, once they start making better grades, they'll feel better about themselves. So focus on the grades. And it's like,
excuse me.
I understand that's very well meaning, but not necessarily appropriate, right?
Right.
And a lot of people, like after they experience that inappropriate response, may shut down and not reach back out for help. May start to feel like there is no help for them because they can only focus on their grades for a little bit of time before their brain goes somewhere else, or whatever the case may be. But then I've also experienced directly through what we went through with our son, who did of course lose his life in 2021.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Where we took him, not only to his primary care physician, but he also had a therapist. He also did inpatient treatment. He also did intensive outpatient treatments. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of people involved in his care, but in reflection, because I've learned so much more since 2021 than, I knew at the time, I can see how much of a difference it would have made if he had had care that was designed for him instead of the cookie cutter. This is the first step of what we do when a teenager is experiencing thoughts of self-harm and suicide, right? Where it's just kind of shuttled through the same program. And there were a lot of things that he expressed to us about the treatment that he was getting where he didn't feel like it was working. And we would try to, convey that to the different practitioners and, try to change up the course. Are you sure that you're qualified to help him with what he's going through? And just being reassured over and over again that absolutely yes, your son's not even a risk, all of those kinds of things. And then for him to ultimately lose his life in that way. So the appropriateness of care is something that is top of my mind right now and very close to my heart. So can you share a little bit more about what appropriate care looks like for you, or through stories, that you've experienced with others of how appropriate care could change the outcome?
Sure. Just recently, last week, I was talking to a veteran sister. You meet people and you connect, and first you were strangers 6 years ago. Now we text each other good morning, and we talk quite a bit. And I told her that I was going to be on this podcast, and we started talking. And she's been struggling with a lot of different mental health and substance abuse, dual diagnosis. And we got on that subject of the proper team. It's not just the doctors, like I said. It's nutrition, psychologists, psychiatrists, case managers, both case managers for mental health, case managers for just normal living, because not everybody has the same opportunity as the next person.
Absolutely true.
And she was struggling with some of the help from the VA. She had a good doctor, but some of the medications that they'd put her on were helping, but then at the same time she was gaining weight. So all of a sudden you're coming out of depression and bipolar and whatever, and you're starting to feel better, and then a few months into it she's getting these thoughts like, oh, I'm a fat pig, and I'm gaining weight and I don't want to go outside, and then your self-esteem starts dropping, and it was just a roller coaster for her. And we started talking about that, and she didn't have the opportunity to have a doctor. Nobody seemed to really convey the treatment to each other. The psych doctors didn't talk to the med doctors didn't talk to the nutritionist. They'd suggest, and she would talk to the separate entities, but then after that there was no collaboration as
Right.
far as a team effort, and a lot of that was lost. And
Which is unfortunate because you can't just treat like individual parts like a short order menu without thinking about how they connect with each other and how a medication might change your sleep, change your hunger.
sister of mine and were talking about. You know, it just didn't seem, you know, when we were talking about this, she's like, you get it. How come my doctors don't get it? And she'd say the same thing to her doctors, and it would just either go woof, or they'd already be, you know, session's over, you know, you have an hour and we got 2 minutes left, you know. And that's another thing too, you know, how can you put a time frame on mental health treatment? I've had a lot of vets, you know, that we have trust issues. We have a lot of issues, but a lot of it is trust and finding somebody that you're comfortable with, and they'll take a few months to get to know a doctor and try to open up, and either their doctor for some reason or other gets changed on them and they have to start from scratch, or just when they're getting comfortable and starting to get into the meat of things, it's like, okay, your hour's over, we'll see you in 2 weeks, you know, and nothing seems to get accomplished.
Yes.
It's I don't want to say it's a broken system, but there's definite need for improvement.
Absolutely.
From within and without, you know. They definitely need to take a look at the collaboration between entities on their treatment team, and then also listen to your patients, you know.
Yes.
I mean, your patients they didn't go to 6-8 years of med school, they don't really know, but they know themselves.
Right.
And they know themselves better than probably you do. It's just hard for them to express sometimes, for patients to express how they're feeling or what's going on.
And they don't necessarily have all of the language either.
Right.
You know, I mean, my son, I asked him one time if he was anxious, and he's like, I don't have anxiety. And it's like, baby, yes you do. Because you can see it,
Right,
you know what I mean? But he couldn't like identify with that, because to him that was his normal to feel that way, right?
And there's so many diagnoses that, especially with mental health, that, you know, you could have these 5 symptoms and end up with 10 different diagnoses with 10 different regimens of treatment and medications.
Yep.
And then those medications take 2, 3, 4 weeks, 2, 3, 4 months to finally be noticeable to both the doctor and the patient. And by that time, most patients either say, hey, I feel great, and they stop taking their meds and get fucked up all over again, or this isn't working and they stop taking their meds and end up starting from scratch and trying to find the right balance of whatever is being prescribed.
It's all trial and error. Everybody's shooting in the dark. They're, you know, building symptom lists and trying to minimize the symptoms instead of heal the patients. Or at least that's how it feels, right? Like, I can't say what somebody's actually trying to do, because I absolutely believe with my whole heart that they go into these professions wanting to do the best good and to help as much as they can, right? But the whole process of it is absolutely lackluster. And I love that you bring in nutrition a couple of times over again, because it is an often neglected piece of the mental health puzzle. You know, there's anecdotal things like, you know, drink your water, eat your veggies, you know, but it's not really a deeper level of education to help people connect with what's actually going to help their specific body. And a lot of the information out there is all over the place. One person says don't eat carbs, another person says eat all the carbs, and it's like, you know, it again, trial and error. It feels like everything in mental health is trial and error.
Right.
And as we start to develop new technologies to help limit that trial and error, there's like gene testing now that people can get to help them see how their body might metabolize different medications, but insurance won't cover that. So unless you're privileged enough to have the funds to cover the out-of-pocket costs, you're back to trial and error within the confines of your insurance allowances too, because they also have scales. Well, you have to start with this super cheap medicine that we can get for like $5. And if that doesn't work for you, then we can try something else, right? And it really doesn't take into concern the patient. It's only the symptom. And I have this hope for the future in looking at physical healthcare, where, people used to not want to talk about cancer, right? Now, cancer is a household word. People know it exists. People know some of the things that can cause it. Some things are still genetic or, come out of the blue. Nobody knows yet why it happens. But most cancer centers have integrative care, combining both holistic medicine along with, more medicine.
Right. And they all have their merits,
Yes, absolutely, they do.
For treatment, I think somewhere along the way, medicine got lost on. There's so many specialties.
Yeah.
There's too many specialties because now all this doctor is focused on is this one thing, and forgets that eating well is going to help, or treating other physical conditions are going to make an effect on the mental health as well, from obesity or not eating correctly, or heart problems, breathing problems, sleep apnea. So many people suffer from that. And if you don't get a good night's sleep, you're going to be screwed up during the day. But it's not taken into consideration because the specialty is just focused on the specialty.
Exactly. So I hope that someday the mental health field will more reflect what we see at places like the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Center in Massachusetts, right? Where they seem to understand that the mental health of the patient is absolutely going to impact their ability to recover from cancer or not.
Of course, how can it not?
Right? They get it, and they provide things like Reiki treatments and crystal blankets and meditation and nutritionists and all of those things, along with radiation, chemo, gene therapy, whatever is appropriate for that patient. And to be able to believe that one day mental health will be a household word, and people will openly be able to say, hey, I don't know what's going on with me, but I don't think I should feel this way.
Something ain't right.
And being able to go somewhere that can see the whole patient.
And I do have to say that being a veteran, we are fortunate, and it all depends on what veteran you talk to and what their experience has been. But for the most part, the VA does try to do that.
Which is great.
They are bringing all of these entities together, trying new treatments. I wish they would get their ass in gear about medical marijuana, but it's getting there, but not where it should be. But yet they're testing with ketamine therapy and psilocybin therapy.
Yes.
For depression and PTSD and other things, and it's been successful. I did have know a few people that have partaken in some trials, and now actually in Pennsylvania. Well, I don't know if it's Pennsylvania. One friend of mine went to Connecticut for ketamine treatment.
I had a friend that did it in Philly.
Suicidal, and again, it's through the VA, so the insurance is kind of a side concept. They just want to treat it, and the cost really doesn't matter because it's the government.
And they get the trial money,
right.
Which is really cool to hear that, actually, because everyone that I know that's done any of the trials for ketamine or psilocybin treatment, psilocybin, I know a couple of people have gone out to Colorado with more holistic, integrated mental health systems. But again, these are all from places of privilege, right? If apparently you're not a vet, because that's super cool that the veterans get it too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're very, and I didn't know that either until I've been involved in the VA, and now that I also work there, the newsletters, and I'm one of the people that actually reads my emails and stuff. So it is eye-opening because it's like, wow, I didn't know we were doing this, And when I was in treatment, I tried acupuncture, and I'm like, I didn't know the VA did acupuncture, and yay to them.
And it's so good.
Right. And
love acupuncture.
Things, things did help, But and again, that's just trying to find out the team, and I use the word team because it's not just one doctor. There's you got to encompass anything that's going to help, bring it onto your game board and use whatever chess piece you got at hand for any given moment, you know.
I love that analogy.
Thank you. But yeah, it's if you, if you can even think out of the box sometimes, and just ask the right questions, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of times we get told no, but there's a lot of times when they're like, that could be a possibility, or I didn't think of that in your treatment. Let me look into it and maybe we can try it. And that's all you can hope for,
right?
But having somebody that is open to different treatments, because, individuals, doctors are still individuals. Mm-hmm. So it also gets into their moral background, mm-hmm. whatever school and practice they went to, and they're only as good as the people that taught them.
Right. And the experiences that they've had since they started.
Right.
And we can't predict those things. And being a self-advocate is so important,
You're always entitled to a second, third, fourth opinion.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's when the insurance comes in and they're like, all right, enough's enough, But, ask. Open up your mouth and ask. Parents, ask about your children. Patients, ask about your treatment, question. It doesn't mean that you don't trust a doctor, but sometimes, again, you might not be getting the correct treatment for whatever diagnosis they came up with, because mm-hmm. there's other diagnoses that can overshadow the same.
They all bleed into each other.
Fucked up and complicated, and
it really is.
That's, I think, why there's such a problem with mental health, and then the world situation and everything else that's just going on doesn't help either.
It's a very complicated world that we live in right now.
It is. It's certainly not the world I envisioned at this stage of my life. I think we time warped back into the 60s or something lately, because it's like, deja vu. I've already been through all of this. I've seen this
Wait,
on
I
TV.
thought we fought that battle already.
I've seen this on TV 40 years ago, and, it's just crazy. But there is hope, and there is treatments that work. But the biggest emphasis is on the patient, and mm-hmm. you have to want to get better. You have to want to be humble and take advice and constructive criticism and stern finger waggings, whatever the case may be. Yourself best, mm-hmm. but you have to trust people and open up and ask questions and be responsible for your own treatment, whatever you're struggling with. Mm-hmm. You know yourself best, and you're in control of your own happiness, mm-hmm. And sadness. The decisions you make affect the world around you, And a lot of people fail to realize that, especially some of our younger generation. They don't understand that action, reaction, consequences, I don't know if it's because of the social media platforms or the way gaming, and I'm a gamer, but
me too.
Some games, if you weren't, and how do I put this? Because I don't want to get down on the parents either, but sometimes if you weren't raised correctly or given the proper attention, and you rely on a game for your learning experience of life, well, that's the learning experience you're going to know as correct. And it's, some games, okay, I'm going to stop and beat up a hooker and take her money and drive away, and yay, I passed this stage of the game. Well, that's not life.
Right, yeah, that's
unfortunately
definitely not.
You can't rely on that. But again, that's the babysitter of the latest generations is TV or a video game or social media now,
mm-hmm.
And it's not raising people correctly, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about, social media and gaming and all that kind of stuff, because obviously I'm on social media. It has its positive benefits. I'm a gamer. I have been since I was 6 years old, and we got our first Atari. You know what I mean? So like games have long been a part of my life. I see a lot of value in that. I see a lot of value in the communities that, gaming can help build and bring people together with common interests, which is so fun and so cool. But, you're right. If people are left too much to their own devices, who knows what can happen? And no two people are the same either, right?
No. The world would suck if we were. It's like, give me somebody new. Come on. But it's so difficult, and then throwing so many pieces into the air and hoping to come up with a complete puzzle it just seems like that's the way treatment has been, instead of sitting down and looking at each piece and putting it together.
I love the idea of the case manager.
What's that?
What you had said earlier about like having a case manager, like somebody that actually like helps you do that.
Well, they do bring a lot of that together, and if you do, and social workers, which is basically case management is mostly social work, but those people are trained to put those pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a question and you are fortunate enough to have a case manager or even a peer specialist,
mm-hmm.
We can talk to people and get on a level as a peer and then convey that conversation to a case manager who can convey the results or non-results to a doctor or other parts of the team,
mm-hmm.
and come back with answers or alternatives or suggestions or no's or whatever you need. That's, I think, what the biggest help that case management does. And I've been fortunate enough to have some very good case managers, and that contributed to my success in my drug recovery. There's not just one therapy out there or any specific support group. If you can gain even one little piece from something, I mean, I'm not much, for my own experience, I'm not much of a godly, spiritual type of person. I talked to a Navy or a VA chaplain, and who's really cool and open and not just a chaplain, but
mm-hmm.
open to any conversation. And we came up with, I'm scientifically mystic, because I like to take for myself the data and the proven things and go with that, but at the same time there's things that happen in the universe that
totally unexplainable.
It's like, well, if there's something out there that's going to work for you, find it, ask the questions, research. I mean, you can never have enough education about yourself and mental health. And I wish the school systems, I mean, even when I was in school and once I got into the Navy and became a hospital corpsman, it's like, how come they don't teach better health, self-health,
mental health with the physical health?
And when I grew up, there wasn't mental health.
Yeah.
You were just fucking crazy.
There wasn't either when I was growing up.
Or a drug abuser. Fortunately, I would say fortunately, about maybe 20, 30 years ago, celebrities and sports figures started coming out with their struggles with either substance, alcohol, mental health, and that created more people to step up and say, hey, I've had these problems too. Mm-hmm. And now we have good mental health treatment. But 30, 40 years ago, you walk down the street and they'd be like, he was in rehab, and people would move their kids across the street and put their dogs away because he was in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
There was a t-shirt, rehab is for quitters. Mm-hmm. They were trying to make light of it. But,
right.
Before that time, there was no such thing. You know, there was rehabs, but
Right.
you were a bad person.
Yes.
You were there because
You had
of
to
the
do it in
judicial
secrecy and shame.
system, and it just was fucked up. Now everybody and their grandmother's got mental health issues, and you know, yay, you're getting treatment and good luck and all that, which is great.
Which is great.
But
We're still got a long way to go.
a very long way to go. Very long way to go.
Well, this has been really wonderful, Karl, and I want to touch on just one thing really quickly, the support system that you mentioned with, you know, take what you can from it, right? There's never enough education, those types of things. Building out your support structure to go beyond one person or one doctor or only doctors, right, is so important, because so often in life we get consumed by daily life, right? I have to do these things. I need to get up. I need to go to work. I need to do the things for my kids, for my husband, for my whatever, right? And then we just rinse and repeat, and we just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then our community becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And now we're trying to get everything that we need from our home lives and our work lives exclusively, or, you know, maybe with a doctor or a therapist mixed in. But if we expand that community, even just, you know, one tiny piece by integrating the spirituality, if that's your thing, or integrating a support group or a hobby, even, right? Something that, you know, helps fill your bucket back up.
Physical exercise,
Yes.
know, which I fail on sometimes, but I mean, everybody's got their thing, and
Yes.
And,
make sure that you've got those pillars in place, and that your only friend isn't your kids and your spouse and your coworkers.
right.
You know, you have to have friends outside of those core pillars to really get the things that you need, and be able to give back too, you know?
Yeah. And just be patient with people. Not everybody
Oh my goodness, yes.
has the same mindset as you, and we all get stuck with thinking that everybody thinks like I do, which is, I've realized, is far from what it is. But be patient, you know. Some people struggle with saying the right thing. Some people struggle with just having eye contact with a stranger, you know. I have a veteran friend. He's like, how come you're always saying hi to people? I'm like, because that's me, you know, but that's not him. You know, he, you know, if there's more than 6 people in a grocery store, he's not going in. PTSD stuff and everything. I get it, but the next person doesn't know that.
Yep.
You know, just think a little bit. Don't react. Try and keep emotions down. You know, because you can look at people, but you don't know what's going on in their head.
Yeah.
You know, and saying hello to somebody, I could have been the first person that said hello to them in weeks, and that could have made their day. Other people could be like, you know, don't talk to me, you know,
Sure.
which is fine,
Okay.
you know, but I don't know what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
A perfect thing when I was at the VA, and again, I'm always saying hello to somebody. And I would pass this guy every day because I'd take my morning walk and go get my coffee, and there was, you know, a little sidewalk inside that, you know, whether it's raining or snowing, you could walk around at the VA. And I would pass this guy every day, and I would look him in the eye and say good morning or hello, and I would get no response. And in my head, I'm thinking like, you know, you fucking rat bastard, you know, at least say something. Until I realized that he had earbuds in and
That's funny.
wasn't hearing me. You know, and then I seen him at eating and talking, and we got into a conversation, and I said, man, I say hello to you every morning and you barely recognize me. He's like, oh, I got these self-help tapes that I listen to, and I'm just into it, and I walk, and I'm like, you know, I'm thinking it's me, or thinking that there's a problem with him, and he's just doing his own thing. But you don't know what's going on in somebody's head or what they're experiencing at the time. And I think that would help a lot in this world, but people don't realize that, unfortunately.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Thank you again so much, Karl, for being here
Thank you.
for sharing your story so openly and so honestly. I mean, to go from didn't think I'd make it past 45 to such an amazing advocate in the mental health space and just doing your thing,
I've been fortunate.
being yourself.
I've been fortunate, so.
But you took control and took the opportunity. Nobody could make you do that but you.
No, that's true. And sometimes, and as you can see, I forget about that too. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to pat yourself on the back, definitely.
Love it.
And don't forget Veteran Days.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And next weekend.
Yeah. That's coming right up around the corner.
But don't forget that there's people out there still missing from Vietnam, from World War II that have never been found, from all the wars. So please just remember that's Memorial Day, but also veterans.
And by the time this airs, Veterans Day will be a far, far away from now, but it's never a bad time to remember the veterans.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.